Hi, I'm Dana, and since my last video was all about whether or not I think untraumatized autistic people exist, I thought that today's video should be about sort of accepting trauma when you're autistic. So I want to start by making very, very clear that I do not have any qualifications in this. I'm not an expert, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a psychoanalyst, I'm not a psychiatrist, I don't know shit. This is purely my own experiences, my own thoughts, what I've been up to, what I've been doing, how I'm dealing. This is all about me once again. But please do not watch this thinking that you're getting any sort of professional advice, because you're not. I haven't got a fucking clue. I'm just struggling and trying to sort things through like the rest of you. It's we're all in this together. I'm no different. I'm not above anyone. I don't know shit. Okay? So the first thing, and this is by far the biggest thing and the hardest thing, and the thing that I'm probably going to struggle to really put into words with any sort of thoughts or advice, which I'm not trying to do. This is not an advice video, Jesus Christ. This is just what I've done. But it's accepting your autistic self. It's one of those things that I still feel like I've only shallowly done. You know, I still have days where I really hate myself, to be quite frank and honest. I have days where I absolutely fucking despise the person that I am and everything that I've ever done. But for the most part, because I've been working on that, I think mostly I've gotten to a point where I have learned to sort of accept myself fairly well. I just can't think about it too much. As soon as I start really thinking about things, I'm like, oh my god, I hate myself, I'm so awkward, I'm so this, I'm so that. It all spirals if I think about it too much. But for the general surface, I think that I have kind of managed to accept myself as an autistic person. And what I mean by this is accepting that sometimes people aren't gonna fucking like me. Sometimes people are gonna think I'm really weird, because sometimes I do weird stuff. I know that we like to at least I do, I like to talk about the normalization of autism and normalizing autistic traits. But at the same time, I'm very aware that sometimes I will look weird to people. I don't like it. I'd rather I didn't. I'd rather it was normalised to not be something weird or whatever, you know? But I also am very aware that sometimes when I stim with just the way that I am, with I don't know, I just know that there's definitely things that I do or say that people find very, very weird. And it still sucks if it's someone that I like that clearly finds that I'm weird or doesn't like me or whatever reason or whatever. But I've also gotten to a point where I'm alright. I've spent so long masking and trying to be other people and trying to be exactly what other people like and trying to be normal. And it was real fucking boring for the most part, you know? And when it wasn't boring, it was just hard and difficult and isolating and sad and lonely and many other negative adjectives. You know, it wasn't a good time. So I just don't care enough for anyone that wants me to do that again, you know? And I think that's one thing that people don't talk about, because I've just sat here and thought for a minute and a half that I will have edited out. But people always act accepting yourself is very loving you who you are, when I think that for at least for me, the reality of accepting myself has largely been accepting how I'm perceived and thought about by other people. I think this might be an autism thing that I've just had an epiphany about. I said a few minutes ago, I've had the times when I absolutely hate myself. But I feel even in the times when I've said out loud, I hate myself, and told therapists and whatever, I hate myself, I don't feel I did. I don't feel I've ever actually had that big of an issue with myself. My issues of my issues with myself have so often stemmed from the way that people have reacted to me and treated me. And that's why I say cutting those people out of my life was a big step of self-acceptance, because I didn't feel bad about myself anymore, you know? This has literally just been an epiphany while I'm filming that a big step to self-acceptance for me was cutting out people that were shitty about the way that I am and shitty about the things that I do. Because I was fine with those things until they pointed out that I shouldn't be. And then that made me self-conscious and hate those things about myself, because they didn't like those things about me, when I didn't actually initially have a fucking issue with those things about me. As always, every autistic person's different. I'm sure a bunch of you haven't experienced this and feel things in a different way. But for me, everything I've ever disliked about myself or said that I've hated about myself has been because I thought that other people wouldn't like it and other people would think it was odd. And just getting rid of the people that might think that way about me has cured me of that, I think. You know, because I was about to like go into a whole bit about masking as well, and how like accepting my autistic self has allowed me to unmask around people, and having that validation of people liking my unmasked self has also been like really helpful and nice. That's because I've specifically like gone out and found people that I know would accept my unmasked self. So it's real easy to unmask and be myself, because I know that they're going to accept me in the way that other people haven't, because the other people are crap, and that's why I got rid of them. Oh. But yeah, to accept autistic trauma, I think a lot of it is accepting that like that's part of who you are, you know? Like a lot of us have trauma, I'm sure, from needs not being met in childhood and from bullying. They're like the two main ones in my opinion, that is like from my experience. And like I often didn't want to accept that I had trauma around my needs not being met as a child, because I was very like, well, I was a needy child, I was over traumatic, I had like too big emotions and all this. And it's like, well, yeah, of course I did, because I was autistic. And in accepting that I'm autistic, I can then also accept like it wasn't that I was too much, it wasn't that my emotions were too big. It you know, like it wasn't, it sounds very like I'm the victim, everybody be nice to me. But you know, a lot of that was not my fault. You know, and even when like I forward to like bullying, there's been a lot of times when I was being bullied where I was very much like, I did this and I'm being bullied, this is my fault. And looking back, it's like, yeah, I did an action that caused the consequence of being bullied. But as an autistic person, I also didn't have like the context and the skills to not make the mistake of that action. And regardless, the actions that I made did not deserve the consequences that I received, you know? Like some really horrible shit happened to me with bullies in school, and me saying something out of turn did not deserve that. But it's not until like I accepted those like autistic things about myself, my autistic traits, that I could be like, I didn't deserve that. That wasn't fair, that was trauma. And like accept it as being trauma, because before that I was just like, well, it was a consequence of my actions. And as much as it may have been, that doesn't mean that it was a valid consequence to my actions. It doesn't mean that it was something that was okay to happen to me. And it doesn't mean that it wasn't trauma. And a big part of like really accepting that it's trauma for me has been just sort of understanding that lack of control, that lack of, I don't know. It's a lack of control, I suppose. I don't have another noun. I haven't got my thesaurus on me, okay? I think I said that word wrong too. But I like to be in control. I script conversations before I have to have them. I know exactly what I'm going to say to like the guy in the corner shop before I go and buy anything, you know? Like, I like to be in control of situations when I can be, and I often can't be. And having to understand and really fully accept, like, my actions don't always cause or deserve the consequences I've faced. I don't get to control everything. I can't, you know, I can't control how other people react. I'd love to be able to. And it's something that I'm definitely still struggling with, because I will like write out messages and reword to try and make sure that I'm coming across in just the right way, that they'll fully understand what I'm saying, so that I'm in control of the like situation and conversation. And not even in like a, I need to be in control, just in a like, I so often feel like conversations and situations are just like slipping through my fingers and I'm trying to grasp on it. I don't know what the fuck's happening. It's nice to feel like I can grasp it, you know? Like, I'm not even saying I'm in control as in like controlling the thing, just in that like I've got a grasp on it and I know what's happening. But a lot of my trauma and the things that I found traumatic and whatever else, I don't understand, and I didn't have a grasp on, and I didn't get to control. And especially looking back, it's having to accept sometimes like you just don't get to control things, you don't get to be in the driver's seat. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but it is very much the case of like, my actions did not cause the consequence, the reaction. You know, I can't control how other people respond. And for a long time, I put the blame on myself of like, well, I can. If I hadn't said this, then that wouldn't have happened. If I hadn't done this, then that wouldn't have happened. You know, I very much saw it as my own fault. I didn't see it as trauma because I saw it as consequences, which it may well be, but it can be both. But outside of that, one of the most helpful things that I've come across and found is having support and validation in regards to my trauma. You know, like, it's not always ideal because like I've got a really nice little group of friends now, and I've had a handful of times where I thought I'm telling them like some fun little story, and then when I'm done, no one laughs, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I have to be like, "Yeah, I didn't realise that was that bad." You know, and that's awkward. But there's been other times when like I've shared trauma in therapy or with friends in like a very this is a safe space to share our trauma, and we're all gonna find out a little something about each other. And it's meant the whole fucking world, actually. It's been really, really fucking great and important for me. And I think it's helped me do a massive amount of healing, honestly. Like I say, so many things that happen to me, I saw it's just the consequence of my actions. So to explain the whole story and the whole situation to someone and have them be like, no, that's fucked up, that shouldn't have happened. And to validate that although it may have been my fault, it wasn't an okay thing to happen still. It's been a big thing for me, and I think that it's something that a lot of us need, because I know that for me at least, I get very in my head and I keep a lot of things to myself. I'm increasingly realising that I should probably actually tell people a lot more and bring up a lot more things, but I just don't like to. I'm so scared of causing any sort of consequence with my words and creating myself new traumas. I know that you need to be your own source of validation and not everything can come from the outside, but also humans are social creatures and we have communities and the for a reason, and it's because we often need support and validation, I think, amongst an array of other things that humans need. And gaining that validation and being told that it wasn't my fault, or that even if it was my fault, just being told that was still really traumatizing and not okay, immensely helpful, incredible in fact. As much as I can tell myself these things, hearing it from someone else is very important and very impactful. But obviously the whole having friends thing is pretty new to me. I mean, it's not, I have had friends in the past, but I've very much isolated myself for several years, so it's new again in a way. And that means that up until recently I've had to work on this kind of thing my own and validate myself. And I just as a hint or tip for anyone still watching this video this far in, I began by very much pretending things that had happened to me had happened to someone else, and not in a getting rid of my trauma way, being no, it didn't happen to me, it happened to someone else, so I'm fine. But in a way of when things had happened to me, I'd be well, yeah, you did this thing, this happened, blah 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 blah. I'd find all the reasons and excuses to blame myself. Whereas if I imagined these situations happening to a friend, to a partner, to someone that I like, if I imagined it happening to them, I'd be no, that's fucked up, that's not okay, you don't deserve that. And then that would click with oh, maybe I didn't deserve that either. Maybe it wasn't okay when it happened to me. If my immediate reaction is that it's not okay for it to happen to someone else, maybe it wasn't okay to happen to me either. And finally, for me, the big thing has been accepting and understanding that trauma doesn't have to be a big giant thing. I think that for most autistic people, trauma is very much something that we experience quite minutely over and over and over and over. And for some autistic people, obviously you will have had the big trauma, but for a lot of us, and even if you have had the big trauma, I think you probably still will have experienced the lots and lots and lots of little ones that just leave you feeling really on edge and fucked up. But for the longest time, I was very I haven't had this one big horrible thing happen to me to mean that I'm traumatized, which means I'm not, which means I haven't experienced trauma, which means I'm fine, duh. Which, I'm going in being I'm so depressed, I'm so anxious, somebody please help me, I'm fine, but please help, but please, I'm fine, I'm fine, nothing's ever happened to me, but please help. So it's I'm clearly not fine, am I? But we try them. But it's similarly to when we talk about depression and people there are children starving in Africa and you think you're sad. It's I am still sad, Maureen. I'm real sorry for the kiddies starving in Africa. That fucking sucks, I'll donate to Gift Aid this Christmas, I guess. But it doesn't change that I'm sad. Doesn't change that I'm anxious. And as much as I hate those types of examples, I was basically doing it to myself, being no one I love ever got murdered. I've never had such and such happen to me, so I'm fine because I haven't been traumatized in this one specific way that I've seen on television, and that's just not how it works. It sucks because I had so many things that clicked in my head as soon as I realised that when I was it was mid-therapy session, my therapist was you do know that trauma, things that traumatise us can be quite small, and it was a montage of 1,000 different moments flashing in front of me, and I was oh really? Because damn yeah. But having that understanding and being able to accept oh, that was traumatising, and being able to be yo, I've got some trauma issues, that's where you can start to like accept it and deal with it and actually heal, and not just push it all to the back of your mind to think about never. And I'm leaving this one to last, and I know it's the most annoying one. I really, really fucking do, okay? Get a therapist. I'm sorry. I know it's not fucking accessible. I haven't seen my therapist in a wee little while because I can't afford it. Like, and that's on like reduced rates for the LGBT with like a therapist that already does cheap rates. Like, I've had 1,001 bad therapists. I get that therapists aren't accessible to everyone because of money, because of cost, because of time, because of whatever else. Like, I totally get that it's a frustrating topic for me to bring up, I know, but for me, I would not have gotten to this point, I don't think, without my therapist, and we got there very, very fucking quickly because she's a really good therapist. So I would specifically recommend getting an autistic therapist if you can, if you are also autistic, because that's what I did and that's what I find to be actually helpful. But I'm throwing it in last after like all the other stuff, because I get it, like, you probably can't. If you could just get a therapist, we'd all fucking have one, wouldn't we? But it's not that easy, and I get it, and I'm sorry to put it in, but you know, for that one person out there that needs the push to get a therapist, it's for them. But that was my last point, so I'm finally going to stop talking now. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year. Oh wait, I'm an advertisee YouTube. I'm not getting paid to advertise you or anything. I'm advertising me. I've got a Ko-fi account if you'd like to donate me a coffee. The link's always down below. I've got an Amazon wish list at the minute that I'm strongly considering deleting because I don't really entirely understand how it works. But that's probably still there, maybe, depending on when you're watching this. There's links to my TikTok, my Instagram, like my general, the other places you can find me if you wanted to follow me in other places. It'd be really nice if you subscribed here. I don't know, I don't like asking people to subscribe. I think you would if you wanted to. But yeah, that's that. So whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year. And I'll see you again in a couple of days.